In the cold, dark expanse of space, the quiet hum of the spaceship was suddenly shattered by a loud explosion. The crew on board had just received a distress signal. Something had gone terribly wrong. A group of soldiers were supposed to be escorting a convoy of supplies, but now their mission had turned into a rescue mission. The transmission from the captain was clear: get to the planet immediately. One of the survivors is important. She's not human. She's alien. Alex, a former soldier with a troubled past, sat at the back of the ship, staring out the small window. He had heard rumors about this mission. It wasn't just a regular rescue operation. There was something special about the girl they were supposed to save. No one really knew why she was so important, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. The truth was, he wasn't even supposed to be here. His last mission had gone horribly wrong, and he had been dishonored. The higher-ups in the military didn't trust him anymore. They considered him weak because he'd refused to follow an order that would have led to the deaths of innocent civilians. Now, Alex was here, not because he had to be, but because he had nothing left to lose. The alarm rang once more, and the ship began to shake violently as they entered the planet's atmosphere. The planet below was known for its hostile environment, full of dangers both natural and man-made. The ground was scorched, and the skies were filled with clouds of smoke from the burning wreckage of ships that had been shot down. The planet was a war zone, and no one had dared to come here for years. Alex's heart raced as the ship descended. He was used to danger, but this was different. There was an uneasy silence among the crew, a sense of anticipation hanging in the air. What if they were too late? What if the girl was already dead? Alex couldn't help but think about the girl. He had been briefed on the basics. She was a survivor of a doomed mission, but why was she so important? Why was she being hunted by the enemy? And why had she been left behind on this war-torn planet? The ship's landing gear screeched as it touched down. The hatch opened with a hiss, and Alex was the first to step out. The air was thick and heavy, filled with the smell of burnt metal and smoke. The ground beneath his boots was rough and cracked, like the earth itself was trying to fight back. He pulled up his weapon and motioned for the rest of the team to follow him. "Stay close," Alex ordered, his voice steady, but the tension in his chest was growing. He couldn't ignore the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Every part of him screamed that something was wrong. They moved quickly through the smoke and debris, keeping their heads low, aware that any moment could be their last. As they approached a broken-down building, the air seemed to grow colder, and the silence became deafening. They were close now, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Then, a sudden movement caught Alex's eye. A figure appeared in the doorway of the building ahead. It was her, the alien girl. She was crouched low, her face hidden beneath a hood, her body trembling from both fear and pain. Alex's heart skipped a beat. She looked young, but the aura of mystery around her was undeniable. Her clothes were torn, and she seemed fragile, but there was something powerful about her presence. She had an energy that radiated around her, something that made Alex feel both fear and awe. She was not like anyone he had ever seen before. The enemy was close. Alex could hear the footsteps of soldiers getting louder, their voices rising in a language he didn't understand. They were coming for her, and they would stop at nothing to capture or kill her. Alex didn't hesitate. He ran toward her, his boots pounding against the ground, his heart racing faster with every step. The team followed, weapons raised, ready for a fight. The girl didn't move, didn't react, as if she had already accepted her fate. As Alex reached her, he saw the fear in her eyes for the first time. It wasn't the kind of fear that would make her fight back. It was the kind of fear that made her believe no one could save her. But Alex wasn't about to let her fall. Not now. Not when they were so close. He grabbed her arm gently, but firmly, and pulled her toward him. "Come with me," Alex said, his voice low but filled with determination. "We'll get you out of here." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with confusion, but something in his tone made her trust him. Without a word, she allowed him to lead her away from the building, deeper into the smoke-filled chaos. The enemy soldiers were closing in fast, and Alex knew they didn't have much time. He could hear the sound of their boots hitting the ground, their voices shouting orders. In that moment, something shifted inside Alex. It wasn't just about following orders anymore. It wasn't about saving himself or redeeming his past mistakes. It was about protecting this girl, this mysterious, powerful being, at all costs. He had no idea what she meant for the galaxy, but he was certain of one thing. She was the key to something much larger than anyone could imagine. And for the first time in a long time, Alex felt like he had a purpose again. But that purpose was about to lead him into a fight that would change the galaxy forever. Alex's background. Alex's life hadn't always been filled with the weight of decisions. There had been a time when he was just a regular soldier, doing what was asked of him without questioning it. He had been good at it. No, he had been great at it. He rose through the ranks quickly, proving himself in battle after battle, never backing down. The higher-ups trusted him, and he trusted them in return. But trust could be broken just as easily as it was built. His last mission had shattered everything. It had started like any other. A mission to neutralize a small rebel group on a distant planet. The orders were simple: eliminate the threat. Alex didn't question the orders at first. It wasn't his job to ask why. He just did as he was told, leading his team into battle with the precision of someone who had been trained for years. But as the mission unfolded, Alex began to notice things that didn't sit right with him. The rebels weren't just armed fighters. They were civilians, men, women, children, desperate and struggling for survival. The truth was clear. The real enemy wasn't them. It was the oppressive regime that had sent him to wipe them out. Alex stood at a crossroads. His team was ready to attack. They had their orders. But Alex couldn't bring himself to follow through. He hesitated. He questioned the morality of it. He was meant to be a soldier, but he also believed in protecting life, not extinguishing it. In a moment of weakness, he defied his orders. He turned his back on the mission, refusing to engage the civilians. The consequences were immediate and severe. The higher-ups were furious. Alex had disobeyed a direct order. He had put the mission and his men at risk. His superiors couldn't afford to let someone like him go unpunished. They stripped him of his rank and placed him on indefinite leave. The news of his dishonor spread quickly, and soon, Alex was a man without a purpose, a soldier without a war to fight. He had become a ghost, drifting from place to place, looking for meaning but never finding it. That was until this mission came along. When Alex was contacted by the military to join the rescue mission for the alien girl, he almost didn't respond. He had no interest in going back to the military life, no desire to risk his life again for a cause that didn't matter to him. But there was something about this mission that piqued his curiosity. Something about this girl, the alien girl who seemed to hold the fate of the galaxy in her hands. Maybe, just maybe, this mission was his chance to make things right. A chance to prove to himself that he wasn't just a failed soldier. The truth was, Alex wasn't just a soldier anymore. He had become something else, a man who had learned the cost of following orders without question. He had learned that sometimes the right thing wasn't the same as the easy thing. Sometimes, the right thing was the hardest thing you could ever do. As he stood on the battlefield, preparing to face the unknown, Alex felt that familiar feeling again, the weight of responsibility. This time, it wasn't a burden. It was a reminder of what had led him here, what had led him to this alien girl. It wasn't just about saving her life. It was about redemption. It was about proving to the galaxy and to himself that he could still be the man he once was. But there was one thing Alex didn't know. This mission would test him in ways he couldn't even imagine. This girl wasn't just another innocent to save. She was the key to something bigger. And it wasn't just Alex's past that would be at stake. The future of the galaxy would rest in the choices he made now. Choices that would push him to the edge of everything he thought he knew. Choices that could cost him everything. Alex was no longer just a soldier. He was someone's last hope. And with that thought in mind, he took the first step toward the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. The rescue mission. The air on the war-torn planet felt heavy, almost suffocating, as Alex led his team through the dense smoke and rubble. Every step they took seemed to echo with the tension that hung in the air. The landscape was harsh. Broken buildings, scorched earth, and the faintest hint of movement in the distance. There was no sign of life, but the hairs on the back of Alex's neck stood up. Something was wrong. The silence was too perfect, the calm before a storm. As they moved forward, Alex's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He couldn't stop thinking about the alien girl. Why was she so important? What could she possibly hold that made her a target for everyone around her? He knew they were on the clock, and every second brought them closer to danger. But the closer they got to the building where they had last seen her, the more his instincts screamed that something wasn't right. "We need to move faster," Alex muttered under his breath as he signaled to his team to pick up the pace. The team had been trained for high-stress situations, but nothing could prepare them for this. The planet was crawling with enemy soldiers, mercenaries who had no regard for anything other than money and power. It wasn't just a rescue mission. It had become a deadly game of cat and mouse, and they were the prey. As they neared the entrance to the building, the sound of footsteps came from behind them. It was a small sound at first, barely audible over the wind and distant explosions, but then it grew louder, heavier. They were being followed. The enemy was closing in. "Get ready," Alex whispered, his hand gripping the weapon at his side. His mind raced with a single thought. If they didn't move fast, they would be surrounded. The team positioned themselves, taking cover behind the wreckage of a nearby transport vehicle. Alex's breath was steady, but his heart pounded like a drum in his chest. There was no time for hesitation now. The alien girl had to come with them, no matter what the cost. He had no idea what they were going to face once they got her out, but he wasn't about to let her fall into the hands of these mercenaries. Suddenly, the sound of gunfire shattered the stillness. One of the soldiers in Alex's team went down with a heavy thud, the shot echoing through the air. The others immediately returned fire, their rifles barking into the chaos. Alex ducked behind the vehicle, his eyes scanning the battlefield for any sign of the girl. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. She was running, stumbling through the smoke, her face filled with terror. But even in her fear, there was a grace to her movement. It was as if she wasn't just running from something. She was running toward something, toward hope. Without thinking, Alex sprinted toward her, pushing his team forward as they covered him with suppressive fire. He could feel the heat of enemy rounds zipping past him. But he didn't slow down. The girl was too close now. She had to be saved. When he reached her, she didn't flinch or pull away. There was no hesitation. She looked at him, her eyes wide with confusion and fear, but there was something else there too, something that Alex couldn't quite place. It was as though she understood him in a way that words couldn't describe. "Come with me," Alex said firmly, grabbing her by the arm. She didn't resist. She didn't need to. They were almost at the exit when another wave of enemy soldiers appeared, their weapons raised. Alex's heart sank. They were trapped. "Move, move, move," he yelled to his team, his voice sharp and urgent. The enemy was too close. They had no time to think. They had to act, and fast. The team fought back fiercely, their weapons lighting up the night, but the numbers were overwhelming. Alex knew they couldn't hold them off forever. The alien girl was their only chance. The only way they would survive this was if she was with them. She was the key. "Stay close," Alex shouted as he shoved the girl toward the small, damaged shuttle in the distance. He could see the shuttle's engine sparking, but it was their only chance. The team made a break for it, covering each other as they ran. The girl was silent as Alex helped her into the shuttle, her eyes scanning the sky as if she were waiting for something. She was no longer trembling, but there was a deep sadness in her gaze. She wasn't afraid of the soldiers who were closing in. She was afraid of something else, something Alex couldn't understand. They scrambled into the shuttle, the doors sliding shut just as a volley of enemy fire hit the hull. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle shot up into the sky, narrowly avoiding a missile that exploded just below them. Alex leaned back in his seat, breathing heavily, but his mind was already racing ahead. They were safe, for now. But the real battle was just beginning. The alien girl sat quietly, her gaze still distant. Alex couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking. Who was she? And why was she so important? The galaxy had just become a much bigger place than he had ever imagined, and he was about to find out just how much bigger. Discovering the alien girl's secret. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as it flew through the endless expanse of space. Inside, Alex and his team were catching their breath, still recovering from the chaotic escape. The distant explosions from the planet had faded into the background, but the weight of what they had just endured still lingered in the air. The team sat in silence, their eyes darting between one another, wondering what they had just gotten themselves into. But amidst the exhaustion and confusion, Alex's thoughts were on the alien girl. She had been so quiet ever since they rescued her, sitting at the back of the shuttle with her hood still low, hiding most of her face. Every so often, her eyes would flicker toward Alex, but she said nothing. It was as though she was lost in a world of her own, distant and unreachable. "What's her deal?" One of the soldiers, Mark, asked quietly. "She's not saying anything. Is she even human?" Alex didn't have an answer. But there was one thing he knew for sure. This girl was far more than anyone had expected. From the moment they first laid eyes on her, Alex felt an inexplicable connection, something deeper than just a rescue mission. There was something special about her. And now, with her in their custody, he was determined to uncover her secrets. The girl finally broke her silence, her voice soft but steady. "You should not have saved me," she said, her eyes staring out the window into the infinite darkness of space. Her tone wasn't one of anger or fear, but something more profound, something that made Alex shiver. "They will come for you now. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Her words hung in the air like a warning, but they weren't enough to silence the growing questions in Alex's mind. "Who's going to come for us?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm, though the rising tension in his chest was undeniable. "Why are they hunting you?" The girl's gaze flickered toward him, and for the first time, Alex saw a hint of emotion in her eyes. "I am not just an alien," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I am the last of my kind." Alex frowned, trying to understand. "The last of your kind? What does that mean?" "I come from a planet called Eryx," she continued, her eyes distant, as if she were speaking about something she could barely remember. "My people were known for our power, our ability to heal and to bring balance to the universe. We were peaceful, but our enemies saw us as a threat. They wiped out my planet, my family, my people. I was sent away, hidden on a ship to escape, but they followed me, and they've been hunting me ever since." The weight of her words hit Alex like a physical blow. This girl, who appeared so fragile, was carrying the last piece of an entire race. She wasn't just any survivor. She was a key to something bigger than any of them could understand. "But why?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why are they hunting you? You said you could heal. What else can you do?" The girl's eyes clouded with sorrow. "My people's powers were never just about healing," she explained, her voice steady now, despite the pain in her words. "We had the ability to restore balance to the universe, to stop the wars, to bring peace. We were guardians of the galaxy. But now, they fear that power. They fear that I might be able to restore what they destroyed." Alex sat back in his seat, processing the enormity of what she was saying. The galaxy was at war. Factions fought for control of the stars, and millions of lives were caught in the crossfire. But this girl, with her quiet strength and mysterious abilities, held the power to change everything, to stop the chaos, to bring peace. The team remained silent, their eyes fixed on her, each one trying to grasp the weight of her words. Mark leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "So, what's the plan? You expect us to just sit here and let you save the galaxy?" He chuckled nervously, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "That's a lot to put on us." The girl didn't flinch. She seemed to expect his doubt, but she didn't let it deter her. "I didn't ask for your help, but now you have no choice. If you want to survive, you must help me. They will stop at nothing to capture me. They will destroy everything in their path to find me. And if they do, it's not just my life at risk. It's the future of the entire galaxy." Alex looked out the window, his mind racing. The galaxy was already on the brink of destruction. Wars had torn apart planets, millions of innocent lives had been lost, and no one seemed to know how to stop it. But now, here was this girl, carrying the last hope for peace. It wasn't just about saving her anymore. It was about saving everyone. "How do we stop them?" Alex asked, his voice filled with determination. "What do we need to do?" The girl's eyes met his, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something new in her expression. "Hope. You must take me to the heart of Eric's," she said, her voice firm. "There you will find the answers you seek, and together we can end this war." Alex nodded, his mind already racing ahead, planning their next move. They weren't just running from danger anymore. They were running towards something much greater, a chance to change the galaxy, to stop the bloodshed, and to bring peace. But there was no guarantee that they would make it. No guarantee that they wouldn't be hunted down before they could reach their goal. And the clock was ticking. The decision to sacrifice. The quiet hum of the ship was interrupted only by the distant sound of the stars passing by. But inside the small shuttle, the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. Alex sat alone in the cockpit, his fingers tapping nervously on the controls. The rest of the crew was gathered in the rear compartment, each of them processing the girl's revelations in their own way. The weight of their mission pressed heavily on all of them. They were on a course toward a place that didn't even exist on any map, a place that could hold the answers to saving or destroying the galaxy. The heart of Eric's. But even as the girl spoke of hope, Alex couldn't shake the growing sense of dread in his chest. The girl wasn't the only one who was being hunted. They were being hunted now too. As the shuttle sped through the depths of space, enemy ships were already closing in. The mercenaries, the ones who had tried to capture her on the planet, were relentless. And worse, they weren't the only threat. Unknown factions, each more dangerous than the last, were circling the galaxy, all with one goal: to control the ancient power the girl possessed. Time was running out. Alex could feel it. A beep from the control panel broke his train of thought. He looked down at the flashing morning. Multiple enemy ships had entered their sector. They had been followed. "Alex, we've got incoming," came the voice of Mark over the comms. "They're on our tail, and they're fast." Alex's heart sank. They were too close. They didn't have the firepower to fend off a full assault. The shuttle was small, unarmed, and built for speed, but not for battle. Their only advantage was surprise, and that was quickly slipping away. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Alex called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "Get to the rear. We need to make sure the girl's safe." The seconds felt like hours as Alex pulled the shuttle into a sharp turn, trying to shake off the enemy ships behind them. They dodged a few shots, but the tension in the air was suffocating. They weren't going to make it out of this if they didn't act fast. Then, as if the universe itself was conspiring against them, the shuttle systems began to fail. The fuel reserves were depleting faster than expected, and the engine began to sputter. "We're losing power," shouted Rachel, one of the soldiers. We're not going to make it to the heart of Erix at this rate. We'll never outrun them. Alex's mind raced. They had two options. They could keep running, hoping for a miracle, or they could make a stand. But the thought of running was almost as dangerous as fighting. If they kept running, they would eventually run out of fuel. If they fought, there was no guarantee they would survive long enough to make a difference. The girl's voice broke through his thoughts. You cannot run forever. You have to make a choice. Alex turned to look at her, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. She knew what he was thinking. She knew that their only option was to make a sacrifice. And she knew that the weight of that decision would fall on someone. Someone would have to make a choice. A choice that might cost them their life, but could save the rest. What are you saying? Alex asked, his voice a whisper. The girl didn't hesitate. The heart of Erix is protected by ancient technology, but the barrier can only be lowered by someone with my blood. My people, we were the only ones who knew how to activate it. If I go, I can unlock the barrier, but only at great cost. It will take everything I have to open the path. Alex's breath caught in his throat. You mean, you'll die? She nodded solemnly. I will give everything I have to stop this war. But someone else must make sure my sacrifice isn't in vain. Someone must finish what I started. The war isn't just about power, it's about control. I can end it, but only if you help me. And for that, one of you will need to stay behind. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He could see it now, the sacrifice that was inevitable. The girl wasn't asking them to give up their lives. She was telling them that in order to bring peace, someone would have to stay behind and face the enemy alone. The mission could succeed, but it would cost one of them their life. It wasn't an easy decision. The team had already been through so much together. They had risked everything to save her. And now, they were being asked to risk even more. A heavy silence filled the shuttle. The crew was looking at one another, their faces pale with fear and uncertainty. But Alex knew the truth. He had been given a chance to redeem himself, a chance to prove that he could still be a hero. But this wasn't about redemption. This wasn't about him. It was about something bigger. It was about the future of the galaxy. Who's going to do it? Mark asked quietly, his voice breaking through the silence. Who's going to make the choice? Alex stood up, his mind made up. The decision had already been made for him. He had lived through the consequences of his past actions. Now he had the chance to make a choice that would shape the future of everyone, not just himself. It had to be him. I'll do it, Alex said firmly. I'll stay behind. The crew looked at him in shock, but Alex didn't waver. This was his moment. He would finish what they had started, and he would make sure that the girl's sacrifice wasn't in vain. As the shuttle neared the heart of Erix, Alex took one last look at his team. Make sure her story is told, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She deserves that. All of us deserve that. And with that, he turned toward the controls, preparing to make the ultimate sacrifice. The fate of the galaxy rested in his hands now. The shuttle's engines roared as it reached the final destination, and the moment of truth was at hand. Alex had made his choice, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The ultimate sacrifice. The shuttle's engines sputtered one final time before shutting down, their hum fading into a sharp silence. Alex stood in the dim cockpit, staring at the dark expanse of space before him. They had arrived, right at the edge of a place no one had ever seen. The heart of Erix, the final step of their journey, the place that could hold the key to ending the galactic war, to restoring balance, to saving countless lives. And yet, for Alex, it was the point of no return. He turned to the girl who stood in the rear of the shuttle, her gaze distant, her face pale. The weight of what was about to happen was almost unbearable. He had made the choice, but the reality of it now felt heavier than anything he had ever experienced. He would be leaving his team behind, leaving everything behind, just to give her the chance she needed to unlock the barrier to the heart of Eric's. "Are you ready?" Alex asked her quietly, his voice hoarse with emotion. The girl nodded, her eyes meeting his. She didn't say anything at first. Words couldn't capture what was at stake. But there was a look in her eyes, a silent understanding. She knew what had to happen. She knew the cost. "I am," she said softly. "But I need you to promise me something. Promise me that you'll make sure this war ends. Promise me that the galaxy won't fall into chaos again." Alex's heart clenched at her words. "I promise," he said, the weight of the promise heavy on his soul. He had no idea what would happen once she activated the heart of Eric's. No idea how the galaxy would respond. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let her sacrifice be in vain. The girl turned, walking toward the center of the shuttle, where an ancient device lay dormant. It looked like nothing more than a relic, a strange mechanism of glowing crystals and shifting energy. But Alex knew that it was more than that. It was the key to everything. She would activate it. But to do so, she would need to give up her life force. There would be no turning back, no way to save herself once she unlocked the heart. Alex's mind raced. Was there another way? Was there any other choice? But deep down, he knew that this was the only path. This was the cost of peace, the price of saving the galaxy. "Stay with me for a little longer," she whispered, almost to herself, as she placed her hand on the device. The air in the shuttle seemed to shimmer with an unnatural energy as the mechanism began to pulse with light. "It will only take a moment. I need to focus." Alex nodded, watching her carefully. His heart was pounding in his chest, his every muscle tensed. This wasn't just the end of a mission. This wasn't just a rescue gone right. This was the moment that could change everything. The girl closed her eyes, her body trembling as the device came to life. The glow grew brighter, casting eerie shadows across the walls of the shuttle. She was concentrating, pouring every ounce of her energy into the device, drawing on her ancient power, her people's power. The barrier that had stood for centuries was now within reach, but only at the cost of her life. "Alex," her voice trembled, but there was a strange calm in it too. "I am doing this for the galaxy, for all of us, but you must promise me that you'll protect it." "I will," Alex whispered, his voice breaking. He couldn't hold back the tears any longer. He had already lost so much. His honor, his comrades, and now he was about to lose the one thing that had given him purpose again, her. As the device glowed brighter, the girl's body began to flicker, her form growing translucent. The energy coursing through her was draining her, pulling everything from her. Alex wanted to reach out, wanted to stop it, but he knew he couldn't. There was no going back now. And then, in one final burst of light, the energy of the heart of Eric's was unleashed. The barrier shattered, its power radiating out like a shockwave, sending waves of light and energy across the shuttle. Alex could feel the shift in the universe, a ripple that stretched through time and space, as if the very fabric of reality was bending under the force of it. The girl's body collapsed to the floor, her eyes still open, but her breath shallow. The last remnants of her life force were spent. She had given everything. "No," Alex shouted, rushing to her side, but it was too late. The girl was gone. Her body was still warm, but her spirit had already passed. She had fulfilled her purpose. She had given everything to save the galaxy. But what about Alex? What now? What would he do without her? The shuttle was quiet now, the roar of energy fading into the distance. Alex sat beside her, holding her lifeless body in his arms. The weight of the sacrifice pressed down on him, but in that moment, something unexpected happened. The stars outside the shuttle seemed to shine brighter. The war was over. The factions would soon realize that the heart of Eric's had been unlocked. The girl's sacrifice had stopped the endless cycle of conflict, and peace had returned to the galaxy. Alex closed his eyes for a moment, letting the tears fall freely. The girl had died so that others could live. She had given everything so that the galaxy could have a future. And now, it was his turn to finish what she had started. He would make sure her story was told. He would make sure the galaxy knew her name. Her sacrifice would not be forgotten. And in the end, the galaxy would never be the same. The aftermath and the new beginning. The shuttle drifted quietly in the vastness of space, its engines silent. The faint hum of the remaining systems was the only sound breaking the deep silence that had settled around Alex. He sat motionless in the cockpit, staring out the small window at the stars beyond. The galaxy stretched out before him, infinite and full of possibilities. But it no longer felt the same. Everything had changed. The girl, her name now known throughout the galaxy, had given her life to unlock the heart of Erix, to bring peace to a war-torn universe. And in the aftermath of her sacrifice, Alex found himself alone with a promise to make sure her story was not forgotten, a promise to ensure her death had meaning. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the war was over. The factions that had fought for so long, each one desperate for control, were now united in their shared loss. They had all felt the shockwave of the heart of Erix being unlocked, and in that instant, the power of the girl's sacrifice became apparent. The conflict that had consumed the galaxy for generations was now a thing of the past. But peace came with a cost. Alex knew that the girl's name would echo through history, but her legacy was not something that could simply be told in stories. The galaxy needed more than just a memorial. It needed to remember why she had given everything for them. And now, it was up to him to make sure that her light would continue to shine long after her death. He had no choice but to move forward, to carry her memory and her mission with him. There was still so much work to be done, and the path was uncertain. But as Alex sat in the quiet shuttle, he felt a strange sense of resolve. He had been given a second chance, a chance to prove that not all humans were defined by their past mistakes, that courage and honor could still change the future. Slowly, he activated the shuttle's comms, his hand steady despite the gravity of the moment. "This is Alex," he said, his voice echoing through the emptiness of the craft. "I'm alive. The mission was a success. The heart of Erix is unlocked. The galaxy will change, and her name will be remembered." The response came quickly, the familiar voice of Mark crackling through the static. "Alex, is it really over?" Alex nodded, even though no one could see him. "It's over," he replied quietly. "The war is finished. But the peace we're entering into, it's not just about stopping the fighting. It's about what we do next." The girl, she believed in a future where people could live without fear of constant war. "We have to make sure that happens." The silence on the other end of the comms was heavy. No one had the words to capture what they had just experienced. But Alex knew that the journey wasn't over for him. His role in this galaxy was far from complete. The girl had shown him a path, a future worth fighting for. And even if it meant facing the unknown, he was willing to walk it. As he set the course for the nearest space station, Alex couldn't help but think of the girl one last time. Her face, her eyes, the way she had given everything without hesitation. She had been the embodiment of sacrifice. She had been the hope that the galaxy so desperately needed. And though she was gone, her vision would live on through him, through those who had witnessed her bravery. The shuttle's course was clear. Alex knew that he had to spread her message, to rally those who still lived in fear and oppression. It wasn't just about protecting the galaxy. It was about creating something better, something that could honor the girl's sacrifice, something that could ensure that no one would ever have to go through what she had endured. He looked out the window again, watching as distant stars twinkled, each one a symbol of the countless lives that had been affected by this war. And somewhere in the vastness of space, he could almost feel her presence, like a whisper, a promise that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. "I will finish what you started." Alex whispered to the stars, "I promise." And with that, he set his course for a new beginning. The galaxy was broken, but it was not beyond hope. Through the sacrifices of one girl and the courage of those who carried her memory, the future was finally within reach. The old ways of war were gone, and now the work of healing, rebuilding, and forging a better tomorrow began. The galaxy was reborn, and the story of the girl who had given everything would live on, carried forward by the hands of those who had been touched by her sacrifice.